Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action.
Hi, y'all. This is Jerry Williams, a.k.a. TV Jerry.
In Mbali, Uganda, they call it Marua. And you sit around a clay pot, sipping this fermented swill from long reed straws that you pass around while sharing stories and possibly diseases.
Wow. What do you think, brother?
I'm Earl. This is Craig. Drinking Marua isn't the worst decision we've ever made. We grew up together in Bangkok, where bad decisions were easy. So let me explain how we got here.
That's an excerpt from the opening of the trailer for the first season of The Good Road, which aired nationally on PBS. The third season drops on September 6th, so I've got Richmond filmmaker Craig Martin and his co-host Earl Bridges on today's Sifter to talk about how the show got started, how it's developed over 3 seasons, and how they turned Earl into a Thai punk.
Sifter Review of the Week.
This Fool on Hulu. What Atlanta did for black rappers and Reservation Dogs did for Native Americans, comedian Chris Estrada has done with this series, which is based on his life with his intergenerational Mexican-American family. He lives at home with his mother in South Central LA and helps run a nonprofit that helps rehab gang members and former inmates, including his older cousin, played by Frankie Quinones, who moves in with them. Quite simply, this show is endearingly funny. The cast is loaded with unique and amusing characters, including Quinones, Michelle Ortiz as his girlfriend, and Jamar Malachi as the passionate pastry chef. They don't overplay, they don't underplay, they play just right. Estrada's character is a sort of Mexican Charlie Brown. He's a put-upon sad sack who's the butt of every joke, but it works to have his solid foundation in the middle of the wackiness. The show is at times clever, touching, and genuinely amusing, while capturing a slice of life that's unique yet universal. By the way, give it at least 2 episodes for it to find its footing. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Craig Martin, are you aware that there is another Craig Martin who was the producer for Sha Na Na?
No, and I loved Shauna Na back in the day. No, I
yeah,
did
back
not
in
know
the day,
that.
some of these people, some of the listeners won't even know who that is. But yeah, when I looked you up on IMDb, that Craig Martin came up too. And there's another big pop star in Sweden named Jerry Williams.
Huh, all right.
Unfortunately, Earl, I got nothing for you.
No, I hope not. Yeah, exactly. It's a unique
He's a
game.
convict in some prison somewhere, I'm sure, that's named Earl Bridges.
So you guys, in all the press, it talks about y'all are best friends. How did y'all meet and how did that happen?
I think part of it is just growing up Thailand, where we grew up in Bangkok. Craig was born there. I went when I was 9 years old. It's a small school, small community. So back
Why
in
were
the
y'all
day,
there? Was this military or?
Exactly. When I was first there in 1974, I think is when I got there. It was the Vietnam War, and my dad was an Air Force pilot. We stayed there for about 6.5 years. My dad later went back as a missionary with my mom. So in the school, the International School of Bangkok, that's where Craig and I got together.
And I grew up, my parents were Baptist missionaries there. So
Really? That's interesting because my father was a Baptist minister, and I remember as a little child they would talk about going to Africa to be a missionary, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's so terrifying." We never went, obviously, but
Right.
You guys obviously must love hot food growing up in those formative years in Thailand.
Nothing's too hot.
Earl and I both cook Thai food, and we always have to be cautious because we add too much heat for the other people eating it.
Yeah, I'm always ordering it mild, which they kind of like, okay, whatever. So how did your careers develop? I know you had separate careers before you came together for The Good Road. Each of you give me a little short version of how that happened.
I started in media and worked out of grad school in Texas for public television for 4 years.
Let me just interrupt you real quickly. Another thing we have in common, Baylor University, when I was considering colleges, I considered going there because they had a film program, which was very unusual back in the 70s, actually late 60s.
Sick and Bears.
Well, I never went. Anyway, I found it was a Baptist university and decided to go to VCU instead and be a heathen.
Yeah, so after that, I did PBS, and then I moved to Richmond to work actually for the same organization my parents worked for, and I worked for them for about 26 years, and then...
Which organization was that?
That's International Mission Board. When they told me to F off, basically, me and about 30 others who I led as the managing director of communications, Earl was the first person to reach out to me.
So Earl, how about you? How did you get to this point?
My career was mostly through some international expat assignments. I worked for Michelin. I headed up their sales for Mexico, Central America, and then got into technology. So really the last probably 20 years I've been in and around nonprofits, in and around technology. I started a company called Good Done Great, We used to run the employee giving program for about 60 of the largest companies. So we had Toyota, Marriott, AIG, Capital One, Home Depot, lots of different ones. We had 3.5 million employees that we were trying to get interested in causes through visual storytelling. And how do you do it in a way that people want to watch it? And a lot of times feel-good television is the worst television. And we made it into a travel show. We said, let's just go to places that are interesting to us and let's hang out with people that are doing some interesting things. And that's the impetus for the Good All Over brand and the Good Road, specifically our television show.
And so the two of you are the hosts of the show. Now, I noticed in the credits and in the trailer, it has, I think, Earl's name on the left and Craig Martin's name on the right. How did you debate over who gets to be on? Because, we read from left to right. Who got top billing essentially there? Was it because of your idea, Earl?
If I got top billing, I think it was just the default, or whatever in the very beginning. It's funny because we started down the road and I thought that I was going to be the host and Craig was going to be behind the camera, but Craig provides a lot of empathy in the stories. And so he quickly became important to almost every story that we did. So he and I do it side by side. And I say, I don't know who the host and the co-host is, but we're both.
I think people do resonate with the fact that it's two good, best friends traveling and we can play off each other. And there are times when I may be too serious and Earl jumps in with a really funny, appropriate joke in that moment, or we're able to riff off of, one of the characters and just really have a super engaging time. And I think the power of that dialogue is that people oftentimes say, well, it's intrusive. People know they're being, filmed and all that. But the reality is once Earl and I start talking to people, it becomes supernatural and they kind of tune everything out, which I think is useful for us.
Now, I'll have to say I'll back that up because I noticed the chemistry between the two of you obviously makes the show work to a great extent. Well, now, speaking of making the show to work, we can't ignore the fact that there is a director, writer, editor, Andrew Dunsing. What's the story behind him?
Andy came on because Craig had worked with him on another project called The Insanity of God, which was a faith-based program filmed internationally. So we really gave Andy free rein. We said we wanted it to be messy, we wanted it to be authentic, and he went with the rest of it. Look, feel, tone, things like that. So the Emmy nominations that we received both for the first season and the second season are quite literally directly attributed to Andy and how he's done his directing and editing.
He created trouble for himself because he does a lot of walk and talk. And I know that's not easy to shoot when you got two people walking and 2 or 3 cameras plus audio trying to get all that going.
Yeah, we have some of the best crew. I mean, and we're a tight crew too. We'll finish a long day of work and then usually go out and have drinks, and which makes it for a long, troubling day when you have to be up at 6 a.m., but a fun day.
How did you develop this? Because obviously traveling all over the world, and you just mentioned quite a crew there, that ain't free. So how did y'all manage? I noticed in the subsequent seasons, you've got Toyota and AMD and some other people sponsoring, but how did you manage to swing that at first? Where was the money coming from? Were y'all secretly rich?
Yeah, we're rich. We're no longer rich. This is how you, make a small fortune. But this is the PBS model, which is very different than, some of the other broadcast ones where you have that concept of something's going to get greenlit, which means that it's going to get funded. And then they're going to take ownership of it. In public television, while we own the IP and we own the kind of the creative inside of the parameters of PBS, we still have to go find our sponsors. And for a first-year show, look, Craig and I, dirty little secret, were middle-aged white guys when we started into television. And that's as unlikely a story, I think, as you can get.
Right.
So when we had the crazy idea, I had just sold a software company and done great. We pulled our resources together and we started down this road of let's figure out what we can do with the show. And as you gut check along the way, we're still getting positive, feedback from a lot of distribution channels and things like that. We landed on PBS. And again, now we're just now kind of recouping some of the costs that we put in the very beginning.
And when Earl says pooled our resources, it means depleted our life, our savings. I do want to give a shout out to, because you listed some of the sponsors, and this will be interesting, I think, to you, Jerry, as well. But Plow and Hearth is a very small sponsor for us,
right?
But they're a local company, largely based in Charlottesville. So we're very happy to have at least one local sponsor on the Richmond side. So that's kind of cool.
And some of the interviews you said that the show is Batman, not Superman. Now, what exactly does that mean?
Working for all those years for the International Mission Board, where I basically did propaganda for the Baptists, I realized that what the organization wanted me to say was that these are superheroes who are just doing amazing things. The reality is they're much more like Batman, all of these characters. I mean, the people, I've been out to remote parts of Africa where they didn't have electricity and pumped from the well, just like the locals. And one of the things I learned and knew after all those years is it's hard. They have doubts. They're struggling all the time.
Right.
Almost always. There's some conflict, stress, and that's much more like that dark, brooding Batman character. And not to say that people don't have the same goals and mission and they're energized to do what they do, but it isn't the Superman, idea.
Well, also Superman has superpowers. Batman really doesn't. He has to use his own money and ingenuity to do his magic stuff, or do his superhero stuff. And Earl, you call yourself philanthropologist. I think I got that right. Philanthropologist. Explain that, please.
Well, I think the idea is that, look, we're getting to do the job that everyone wants to do. You get to hang out with a good friend, travel around the world, tell stories about people doing good. So we're trying to figure out, what is this job that we have now? Philanthropology was kind of what we landed on, and it's that search for the good. We are searching, trying to uncover, and we're also, I think, very cognizant, just like an anthropologist is, of the fact that when you're there, everything changes. You can't walk down a beach without leaving footprints, and you can't be in a place without having your fingerprints kind of all over. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is not be too intrusive, but also go find the good wherever that may be. And oftentimes that's in the darkest corners.
That was going to bring me perfectly to my next question. You've been all over the place. You've been to Thailand, Kenya, Alabama, Tanzania, Uganda, Myanmar, India, Puerto Rico, Richmond, Charleston. How do you find the people and decide, okay, we're going to go talk to this person or feature this particular group?
Well, initially we started with, the fact that we grew up in Bangkok and we have just a really big network, and we've got a lot of friends that are all over the world, kids that we've just grown up with. But then after that, after season one, and people started seeing what it was that we were doing, there's no shortage. We get hit up for stories every day virtually of somebody doing something amazing. And so the hard part is, how do you curate? How do you pick out of all the things that there are good to talk about?
COVID really did kind of force us into, how can we do the show still? And that kind of directed us more domestic in a lot of ways for season 2 and even for season 3.
Surprise guest drop in. Talking about season 1 and season 2, we have a surprise guest visitor who worked with you on those seasons.
Oh,
Carlos.
Footnote.
Carlos Chafin is the president, composer, and co-founder of In Your Ear Recording Studios. So what did you do for The Good Road?
Oh, messed it up pretty much. I put them on the bad road. I'm responsible for scoring and the audio for the show. So I mix the show. Andrea Buchheit, does the dialogue editing and gets all that stuff straight and hands it over to me.
By the way, send her my love, because, of course, she did the work on my Dirt Woman documentary.
She
along
did.
with you.
She did. She is. She's back there hanging out. So it's
cool.
Do I have to do something to turn video on? Yes, I do, don't I?
Is this your first Zoom, Carlos?
No, it's usually I'm the person starting the Zoom, so there you go.
Okay,
and I don't have to worry about these technicalities. But this is a podcast, so who cares, right? This is
exactly.
So there you go.
well, I will say both Carlos and Andrea and the whole team at In Your Ear Studios has been a huge part of it.
I think Carlos has an interesting story about one of those early episodes in the production.
Earl probably knows what it is.
Yeah, I think so. That's why. That's why I want to interrupt him before he gave it away.
Yeah, I know.
Carlos, come on, lay it on us.
Exactly. Well, as you've probably discovered earlier in this dive here, these guys are, they met in Thailand. So they speak Thai and they are part of that. They know the cultural deal over there and everything. So the first show they do is, of course, from Bangkok. And the editor, Andy Dunsing, wanted to have a piece of music that was Thai as the opening piece to the whole show. So he finds this weird band doing a version of Chicago's 25 of 6 to 4 in Thai. And Andy's thinking this would be a really funny way to start the show. And he was absolutely right. But, you got to get the rights to stuff like this. You can't just throw things in shows.
And it ain't cheap when it's a big hit like that.
Got that right. They're going to hold these guys up by the ankles and shake them hard to get the money. So I said, that's fine, but you can't do this. And besides, it sounds bloody awful anyway. I mean, you don't want to start your first season with this thing that sounds like it was recorded in a Thai bathroom somewhere. I don't know where.
On a cassette recorder, no less.
Probably. Exactly. So I said, okay, I'm going to write something different that has horns and the feel of this, but it is not this song at all. And of course, this other thing was in Thai. It was a singer. I said, okay, Earl, you need to do your homework here. We need to find a Thai singer over there to sing this. I'm going to send the track over. We'll get a Thai singer to do this thing.
It was kind of punky, too, wasn't it? Or hard rock or something?
Very, very punky. So we get down to the finish line, and no singer has been found. For some reason, we came up with the bright idea that Earl should sing it.
Write it, and sing it.
And sing it. So I came up with some lyrics. I said, translate this. Which was hilarious in its own way. But then he gets out in the studio, and we transformed Earl into a punk Thai singer.
Wow.
And it is on the front of the show. It is really what is there.
And Earl, share the one little fun Easter egg that you did with the countdown.
The way I started it, instead of a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 type thing, we did a Bat Hok Jet Ha Samsung Gao, which means 8675309. So you have to know Thai. And, that song was popular when Craig and I were in high school. So I thought it was a great, homage back to that area. But unless you speak Thai, you never picked it up.
And you have to be of a certain age to even know what that song is.
Jerry, thanks for inviting me to torment these guys for a second.
Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you so much, Carlos.
Good seeing you, Carlos and Andrea.
So you're getting ready to launch season 3. What did you learn from season 1 that helped you make season 2 better, and maybe even is going to make season 3 different or even better?
So starting out a television show from the very beginning, when you've never done it before, there's a lot of unknowns. It's like every other business, entrepreneurial venture that I've done before. And looking back in hindsight, we spent way too much. We didn't know exactly what the format was. We thought we had a good idea for content. We didn't know what the audience was going to be. And so over time, as we developed into season 1, we landed on PBS as our, distribution outlet and got much smarter on what it was that the show was going to be. So season 1 costs were probably double what they should have been. Season 2 costs, we've got, more refined. Now we have sponsors, and now we have, distribution, and now we have viewership, and now we have demographics and all the rest of it. So things have gotten better and better. And hopefully the show reflects that as well. I think we're certainly more efficient, but I also think our shows are much better.
People early on, and still to this day, they have the misconception that our show is about nonprofits. It can be, it often is, but it's not just about people who are not, getting paid well and whatever. It can be for-profit companies. It can be large institutions. It can be government.
That we did a whole thing on the Space Force.
Yeah. And so we even had a little bit of pushback initially from some of the PBS folks going, I thought the show was about philanthropy. And we're like, well, it is, but it's also about changing the world for the positive. An organization, for instance, like Space Force really does. And I know this is controversial, but they do help to protect space for the scientists and engineers and people who are going out to help figure out how to mitigate against climate change. That's the fun of the show, is we don't want to be pegged as, we had a woman, the first time I talked to a woman over breakfast that came from a Title I school in Nashville, and we wanted to add her into the show. She was like, Craig, I'm just curious. We don't do like food distribution. We're just educators. I'm like, well, no.
That's kind of important. Yeah,
that's kind of important.
Yeah. Well, now you mentioned sponsors. Obviously, now you've got Toyota, which is great because you're traveling all over the world, I'm assuming, in their vehicles, and AMD and Plow and Hearth. How did you wrangle some of these sponsors? Did y'all just go out and say, hey, give us some money?
It's never as easy as it looks. Getting sponsorships and stuff, especially when you've never been on television, is really hard. So we really pounded the pavement. We went back to some brands that were wanting to associate their brands with some of the good work that are going on around the world. And so that helped us a little bit.
And in the case of AMD, we actually had an episode we showed them that was about technology being used in the anti-poaching efforts in Kenya. And just the idea of, saving endangered species through technology, they got excited about, because they're
Wow,
like,
yeah.
that's exactly, the kinds of things we want to use technology for.
Right. In season 2, episode 1, which actually I saw at the Richmond International Film Festival when it played there, when you're interviewing people out in front of the Lee Monument, and of course it was in the height of COVID, it seemed weird to me because everybody had on masks and they were easily 6 to 8, 10 feet apart. And I'm like, why don't they take those masks off, at least for the interview? What was the decision behind that?
Most of the COVID era stuff where people were really concerned about catching it. And I mean, that was right in the middle of that.
Right.
And it became, of course, as we know in our nation's history, a political issue. If you wear a mask, you're some sort of flaming liberal. And if you don't wear a mask, you're some right-wing nut who doesn't believe in it.
Of course, that's played out in the show, too, a little bit.
In the case of that particular scene, here I am talking to two of my African-American brothers who, very important in my life. And they were going to wear masks because, as we know, disproportionately affects the Black community. I don't think they were personally that worried about the situation. But I think the optics of it, just being out there in the middle of COVID, and you've got, folks not wearing masks, I think that was the decision. But at the same time, it was a little bit of respect for the community that you're working in.
Sure.
I was just going to say, Jerry, the other thing on this, the mask thing kind of is a cultural thing anyway. And we traveled around the world and we're in different cultures, and you're respecting kind of the community where you're at. So we do the things that we should do. We're not the ugly Americans wherever we are, whether that's domestically or taking our shoes off in a Buddhist temple or showing respect inside someone else's cultural area. It's not too much for all of us to take at least a little bit of an awareness about where your surroundings are, where you are as a guest inside of a community.
What is the biggest challenge of this show?
Funding. Honestly, it's just that.
Craig's shaking his head yes, too, for those who can't see him.
Funding with anything, every business venture I've ever been a part of, it's finding the right investors, finding patient investors, finding people that believe in it. And so I think that's part of it, is just being able to tell the story, understanding where, this thing is going to land, and then trying to get it funded.
I would have to echo it. Neither Earl or I get paid to do it yet. The joke in my family with my kids and my wife is they tease me now saying, yeah, Dad, when the show takes off, which is ironic because the show's done really, really well.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, how did that distribution come about? Were they the first ones you pitched it to?
No, we started hitting a couple smaller PBS stations, and they immediately said, yeah, we'd love to back your show. And so we started our first season with WETA, WETA out of DC, backing the show, and then we moved to GBH. So yeah, we've kind of progressed on with friends that have bigger distribution for us.
For the most part, public television has been really great. No, I wouldn't say for the most part, definitely, full on has been really great about not getting into our, kind of editorial business. They have some rules and we try to, break them. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
As you should. Exactly.
We try to follow them. But for the most part, we can be as vocal and often are about topics and issues that, we believe strongly in, that we're just kind of like, this is how it is. And that from our perspective.
The last question I always ask everybody, what are you watching? When you're not sitting in an edit suite, you're not doing your own work, what do you watch? Sitting home, TV, streaming, whatever. Craig?
Well, I knew you were going to ask this question.
Oh, good. As a listener, thank you. So you're prepared. Earl, you can be scurrying to figure it out while Craig answers.
So I, as you might imagine, as a documentarian, watch a ton of docuseries. Probably the most disturbing and compelling documentary I saw was recommended to me by one of the women at the post office near my house. She found out that I did the show and everything, and she goes, "Have you seen Girl in the Picture?" And
right.
So I watched that and was kind of riveted by that sad and tragic story. I love any kind of docuseries, though. It's really what I spend a lot of time with.
And there's plenty of them out there now. That's a popular form now.
It really is. And that was, in some ways, that's helped our show because people got kind of used to now watching, things that were not narrative scripted feature kind of work.
Earl, please don't say you watch documentaries too. Come on, give me something.
Hey, I'm still watching Tiger King.
Oh, my Lord.
Those types of stories that feel weird and kind of off the beaten track and things like that take you by surprise. I like that. And so, yeah, Everywhere, Everything, All at Once. I'm in the middle of kind of watching that as well. I love that because it's quirky. But I get sucked up into the Yellowstone and, some of the other shows as well, where you got character development. You've got people that are, again, Batman, not Superman.
So here's a funny thing about watching stuff, and Earl and I are both this way. We spend a lot of time on Delta Airlines. And we watched the in-flight entertainment.
Right.
And our show actually was in Delta's in-flight entertainment. And I think is about to be again. It's always been so disappointing. Like everybody's watching all these cool movies and you're like, there's a show on there called The Good Road. You should really, it's always awkward too whenever I point out, oh, that's my show. People are like, why are you talking to me?
You're weird looking and you have red glasses. Well, thank you guys. You guys have been great. This has been lots of fun. It's been very informative. And as a sign off, I would like to request that you both just say something interesting or pleasant in Thai.
Earl?
ผมดีใจมากนะฮะวันนี้เป็นวันที่สุด
Craig, you want to translate his and then say yours and he'll translate?
He just did all the pleasantries of this, I'm thankful and all that. And he didn't say what he's really thinking, Jerry, which you're
going to say in Thai and then let him translate it.
Yeah.
So you're hungry?
Yeah.
It's time for lunch. Get some of that hot Thai food, right?
I was like,
all right, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Craig Martin and Earl Bridges are the co-hosts of The Good Road. Season 3 airs on PBS starting on September 6th, and there's a link on the webpage for this podcast at tvjerry.com.
Coming soon. In theaters.
3,000 Years of Longing. This psychedelic drama from George Miller features Tilda Swinton as an academic who unleashes a genie, Idris Elba. Breaking, John Boyega and Michael K. Williams star in this drama about a Marine vet who's denied financial support from the government and ends up in an unfortunate standoff. The Invitation. After discovering that she has a long-lost cousin, a woman travels to a lavish wedding in the English countryside that turns very dark. Liger, a sports action film about an MMA boxer from India.
TV and streaming.
On the 24th, Welcome to Wrexham on FX. This docuseries is about the titular soccer club that was bought by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Mo on Netflix, a comedy about a Palestinian refugee and his family. On the 25th, Mike on Hulu, a docuseries about heavyweight champ Mike Tyson. The End is Nigh on Peacock. The science guy walks us through some hypothetical disasters. On the 26th, Samaritan on Amazon. Sylvester Stallone plays a reclusive man who's actually a super vigilante. Me Time on Netflix. Kevin Hart and Mark Wahlberg get into trouble when the wives are away. On the 28th, The Bolans, A Scandalous Family on PBS, a BBC series where historians explain their lives and actors reenact it. The Patient on Hulu, created by the duo behind The Americans, about a psychotherapist played by Steve Carell who finds himself held prisoner by a serial killer. See on Amazon returns for the final season starring Jason Momoa, who lives in a world where everyone is blind. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sifter, including literally thousands of reviews,
visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.